Et tu, Brute, then falls Caesar. Hello everyone, this is one of the most famous lines of Shakespearean oeuvre. We are not going to analyze the famous murder scene in his play Julius Caesar, which is the climax of the play, which has been analyzed by many people. Today our focus will be on the first catalyst in the play in Act 1, Scene 2 that led to this climax. Like Plato said, the beginning is the most important stage of any venture. Therefore, reading the beginning of this conspiracy informs us about the nature of political conspiracy whose aim is to oust the head of state, in this case Caesar. Since Brutus's mind gets convinced in stages throughout the play, but Cassius in the second scene of the play sows the seed that would ultimately lead to Caesar's murder. Therefore, our focus will be on the rhetoric of political conspiracy, which basically means the focus will be more on Cassius. So first, the context of the scene. There is a loud applause outside on the street as Caesar is crowned, while inside Cassius and Brutus are standing and listening to it. Cassius and Brutus are close friends. They are both senators as well. They sit and eat with Caesar. They have been together for a very long time. It is important to note here that Caesar, Cassius and Brutus are all from the ruling class. The three of them, just like other senators, are within touching distance from the prized position of the king. To give you some perspective, Shakespeare does not choose here characters like extremists or two commoners in their house hatching a plan to kill Caesar. Of course, it is a historical play, but it is not written by a historian. It first and foremost is a literary representation. Nonetheless, the fact holds true that Shakespeare agrees with the historical fact. Political conspiracies are hatched by those close to power, not by a commoner. This is the first Shakespearean thesis, and coincidentally Machiavelli also presents the exact same thesis in his discourses. Political conspiracies are always carried out by those who are close to the head of state. Cassius begins by justifying his credibility as Brutus's friend. He asks him, "Tell me, good Brutus, can you see your face?" To which Brutus replies, "No, Cassius, for the eye sees not itself, but by reflection, by some other things." And then Cassius takes on the role of reflecting Brutus to Brutus. After listening to the applause outside, Brutus exclaims, "What means this shouting? I do fear the people choose Caesar for their king." Cassius immediately seizes the word fear and employs his art of persuasion. He hits the first arrow. He says, "Aye, do you fear it? Then must I think you would not have it so. You are always afraid of something that you do not want or that you want to avoid. And it is a question as well, something that demands an answer." It seems as if Brutus was walking away, but Cassius senses it and tries to draw him in with a difficult question. Brutus replies, "I would not, Cassius, yet I love him well. But wherefore do you hold me here so long?" He has identified the frustrating element in his desire to overthrow Caesar, his love for Caesar. Remind yourself when Caesar dies and Antony is allowed to give a speech. He shouts at the senators and the mob, "You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason." He points out to the same love Brutus is talking about over here. There is a cause to love Caesar, and then there is a cause to kill Caesar. Until before Cassius talks to Brutus, the latter's love for Caesar, just as the general mob's love for Caesar, has the upper hand, whereas Cassius's task is to persuade Brutus that the cause to kill Caesar is nobler than to love him. Here we have a situation in which we have a politician who is loved by the citizens, but politicians like Cassius because of envy cannot bear it. How will Cassius change the pecking order of causes? What rhetoric he would employ to convince Brutus that Caesar deserves to be replaced? Brutus himself provides the starting point, which is a common starting point for a politician, but the most vaguely defined one. He demands Cassius, "What is it that you would impart to me? If it be aught toward the general good, set honor in one eye and death in the other, and I will look on both indifferently." General good is the most important one here, followed by honor. Not only politicians, but every citizen living in a defined territory has natural tendency to work for the general good. In fact, everyone does that. Someone works really hard because he thinks that the need of time is economic superiority. Someone else works to eliminate what he considers to be a threatening element for the country. Someone else gives lots of charity because he considers the elimination of poverty to be the national priority. The problem with the general good is that there is a very blurred line between national interest and personal interest. One of the rhetorical tactics, which Cassius also uses here, is to tie down to vague terms and then give them arbitrary association through play of words. Cassius senses the opportunity and says, "Well, honor is the subject of my story." Politics is amoral. Terms like honor, virtue, human rights are loose terms without any fixed meaning, because political order is a man-made order, not a natural order infused with harmony. Now you see why Plato has so much emphasis on harmony in his Callipolis. These terms are used for political ends, therefore they change meaning according to the situation. In the heat of the moment, no politician, in fact, no man or woman, is aware of these subtleties, and Cassius would take advantage of that. He begins his attack on Brutus's mind with the idea of material equality. He says, "I was born free as Caesar, so were you. We both have fed as well, and we can both endure the winter's cold as well as he." This is the same argument that Shylock gives in The Merchant of Venice. "Hath not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions, fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as a Christian is?" This biological or material argument is often employed in Shakespeare, and his genius lies in the fact that he has exposed its frailty by employing it by a victim and a conspirator alike. If I can persuade you on the basis of biological equality that someone deserves to be killed, and you become convinced that it should be the case, then I already knew the argument was flawed. But you were just looking for an excuse to get convinced. You were just looking for a catalyst. Otherwise said, you were already convinced, you just needed an excuse as motivation. Cassius further underlines Caesar as a weak biological being with his story of the Tiber River and how he pulled Caesar out of it when he was in trouble, followed by a caustic remark, "And this man is now become a god, and Cassius is a wretched creature and must bend his body if Caesar carelessly but nod on him." Another important skill a conspirator employs, and this works more powerfully with the public as well, is when a politician drops I for his own proper noun, like in the sentence, "Cassius is a wretched creature." He's actually playing the trick of deluding the listener by diluting his ego with the listener. Not only is Cassius a wretched creature, but Brutus is also a wretched creature, since there can be only one god in a state, and that god is Caesar, while Cassius speaks. This story is followed by another one, and this time he stoops so low as to become a misogynist. He rambles on. "He had a fever when he was in Spain, and when the fit was on him, I did mark how he did shake. 'Tis true, this god did shake. His coward lips then from their colour fly, and that same eye whose bend doth awe the world did lose his lustre. I did hear him groan, aye, and that tongue of his that bade the Romans mark him and write his speeches in their books. Alas, it cried, give me some drink, Titanius, as a sick girl. You gods, it doth amaze me. A man of such a feeble temper should so get the start of the majestic world and bear the palm alone. The overarching argument he is presenting here is very simple. A man like Caesar, who is as feeble and weak as everyone else, who is as prone to sickness and death as everyone else, who is as prone to fear and trembling as everyone else, what right does he have to have a Roman crown on his head? If a sick and feeble person like Caesar can be a king, what is Brutus lacking that he cannot be one? Since he must have seen the words making their way to Brutus's heart and tearing it apart between national and friendly interests, he then admits philosophically, men at some time are masters of their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. Caesar is not king today, Brutus, because fortune has chosen him. On the contrary, Brutus, the real fault is in us. We have let him be the king. This is followed by another material comparison. Now in the names of all the gods at once, upon what meat doth this our Caesar feed, that he is grown so great? And then he puts the soil on his seed with the last words that are enough to breed ambition of power, or to put it more bluntly, the greed of the crown in Brutus's heart. Oh, you and I have heard our fathers say, there was a Brutus once that would have brooked the eternal devil to keep his state in Rome as easily as a king. In Cassius's arguments, we never hear about the political side of the debate, the economic side of the debate. We never hear him compare Brutus and Caesar as politicians or soldiers or war commanders. He only focuses on the biological aspects, or in today's terms, racial and ethnic aspects. Racism and ethnicity are unfortunately the most commonly used political weapons since humans have existed. Shakespeare has represented in this powerful, very short scene many elements of political conspiracy, of which we have discussed just a few elements. This short scene can be read closely by diplomats and politicians to get acquainted with the tactics their enemies could employ against them. But most importantly, this scene should be read by everyone to understand how beneath political rhetoric there is nothing but a nexus of personal interests and envy. Maybe we will learn how not to get duped by them. Thank you, everyone.